Dear students, I would like to discuss the most common writing errors in business writing, and I posted this information in your learning module so you can follow along with me. The first writing error is writing in the passive voice. I would say 80 to 85% of your business writing should be phrased in the active voice. And when you think in terms of the active voice, you're thinking in terms of the subject of your sentence is performing the action. So if we take a look at this example, the paper was written by Abe. That would suggest that Abe is passive in what he is doing. You want to give Abe the power in what he's doing. So Abe wrote the paper. Abe is the subject of your sentence, therefore he should be performing the action of writing the paper. So he wrote the paper. Remember that for active voice can be in the past or present tense. And I mentioned that 80 to 85%, 90% of your writing should be in the active voice. The time in which you would write in the passive voice and the time in which that is okay would be when you are delivering bad news. Okay, so when you give bad news, to take the negativity out and not to blame the reader, you can phrase the information in the passive voice. Otherwise, your writing should be in the active voice. The next writing error is writing in unparalleled structure. Many times you'll hear this referred to as agreement. So unparalleled structure or agreement or lack of agreement all refer to the same writing. So for unparalleled structure, it refers to sentence structure that does not use the same grammatical form throughout a sentence. So you want to make sure that you're writing in parallel structure or that your writing is in agreement. So in other words, all clauses are active, all verbs are infinitives or participles, you begin with a noun, etc., etc. Now this really refers to when you present information in a list, and a list refers to 3 or more items in a list. So if we take a look at this example, the New York Knicks want to draft a power forward who can rebound with strong defensive skills and who can score. So you begin the first description with who can rebound. If you begin with who can rebound, everything in that list in which you are describing what the New York Knicks needs to do as far as drafting a player, well then each has to begin with who can. Okay, so who can rebound? The second item is with strong defensive skills. This item is not parallel because the next item begins with who can score. So to make this sentence parallel, the New York Knicks want to draft a power forward who can rebound, play defense, and score. So we're beginning with verbs: rebound, play, score. And moving on to agreement. So you want to make sure that for agreement to occur, again, everything has to be parallel, but now we're referring to subject, verb, pronoun, noun agreement. So in other words, for your subject verb, all verbs, if they're singular, well then that subject needs to be singular. If they're plural, well then the subjects need to be plural. Please keep in mind that these pronouns, anyone, anybody, everybody, everyone, are singular. Therefore, that verb needs to be singular, or that pronoun, or that noun needs to be singular. So it's incorrect to say or to write everyone had their homework done, because everyone is singular, yet there is plural. Therefore, this sentence does not agree. The correct sentence is everyone had his, her homework finished. This agrees. And remember that in business writing, you want to make sure that you have the both genders as far as your pronoun is concerned. So you want to make sure you have his, her, because in business, your audience will be composed of male and female. So you want to make sure that you have representatives of each gender. The series comma, and this is very important. When listing more than 2 items in a sentence, make sure that you separate the items by including a comma. And you want to include the comma before and. This is very important. It's very important to make sure that you include the series comma because it does prevents misunderstanding, and omitting that comma can change meaning. And in many cases, businesses have faced lawsuits because by omitting the series comma, the information totally changed, and so they had to make sure that they had to succumb to whatever that particular sentence said, because even though they may have intended it to mean something else, omitting that series comma totally changed the meaning. Okay, so for example, the firm's medical policy covers medical, dental, disability, and life insurance without including that comma here. What you're saying is that disability and life insurance really is one insurance, not 2. So disability and life insurance is indeed 2 types of insurance. So you want to make sure that you include that series comma. So you want to change it to the firm's medical policy covers medical, comma, dental, comma, disability, comma, and life insurance. Moving on to the proper use of hyphens. You want to make sure that you use a hyphen when 2 words function as one, and when 2 words are used as an adjective. So interest-bearing account, interest-bearing describes what type of account this is, and well-informed describes this type of executive. Remember your proper use of the semicolon. Use a semicolon to separate dependent clauses. So for example, the first quiz will take place next week. Subsequent quizzes will take place within the next 13 weeks. So these 2 dependent clauses have something in common. You're referring to the same subject. Okay, so you want to make sure that that is the case, but they're also complete clauses. Okay, so they're independent. You can also use a semicolon when using commas would just really confuse the reader. So if you want to break up groups and instead of using several commas, you can use semicolons. So particularly when you are presenting dates, multiple dates. A colon, remember that a colon represents an example of what you just said or what you just wrote. So for example, the types of lists include colon, numbered, bulleted, and alphabetic. So the types of lists, these would be an example of the types of lists. Sentence fragments, of course you want to make sure that you write complete sentences. Okay, so if you were to begin a sentence which reports that the figures are incorrect, well, that doesn't make any sense. This is a fragment, so you want to make sure that you write a complete sentence. And also another example of a fragment, because the department could not pay for new computers. When you begin, if you begin a sentence with which or because or since, you want to refrain from doing so because that could definitely lead you to writing a fragment. Then we have run-on sentences, and this could be 2 or more sentences that are not punctuated. So it just goes on and on and on. Students completed the assignment on time. The assignment was easy for the students because they all earned an A. And we can definitely break up this one sentence into 2. At the very least, we can include a semicolon. Writing contractions. Business writing is considered formal writing. Therefore, you do not want to use contractions, especially to begin a sentence. So really, I say to you, refrain from writing any contraction. Okay, but you don't want to begin a sentence with a contraction. Very informal. And also remember that with international audiences, an international audience may not be aware of this particular contraction, so it's just easier to spell out each word. Then we have using exclamation points. Remember that an exclamation point denotes emotion and suggests that the reader should feel a particular way. Remember that business writing is objective, therefore you do not want to use exclamation points. So when you write memos and letters and reports, you don't want to use exclamation points. Really the only time in which an exclamation point is acceptable would be marketing documents, and you will experience a form of marketing documents later in the semester, so we can discuss exclamation points a bit more at that time. But as of now, for your everyday memo, letter, in a business situation, report in a business situation, you do not want to use exclamation points. All right, so please keep these common writing errors in mind so that you can avoid them, and also remember ways that you can improve your writing so that you are not succumbing to using these common writing errors.